this lesson, we will continue talking about inequalities and also discuss the vocabulary of lines. When we talk about lines, we use a few different ways to represent the equation of a line. One way is using slope-intercept form. The equation for that is y equals mx plus b, where m represents the slope and b is the value of the vertical intercept. We can also use point-slope form. The formula for that is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1, where m represents the slope and x1, y1 represents a point on the line. We want to remember that a vertical line will be written with an equation x equals a number, where the slope is undefined, and a horizontal line is when we have y equal to a number and the slope is 0. We should also remember that the slope is equal to the rate of change, which is the vertical change over the horizontal change. A positive slope is when the graph is increasing from left to right, and a negative slope is when it's decreasing from left to right. The vertical intercept is the value at which the graph crosses the vertical axis, and that is a y value. The horizontal intercept is the value at which a graph crosses the horizontal axis, and that is an x value. In example 1, we take a look at the graph and we need to find the value of p plus n. They're defining p in this problem as the value of the x-intercept, and slope is going to be n. So we start out with the x-intercept. So we look at the x-axis here, and when we're looking for where it intersects, the line crosses here at -2. So our value for p is going to be -2. For finding the slope, we want to identify two nice points. So if I use this point right here that we just talked about, and maybe I'll use this point right here because it looks like it intersects the grid lines in a nice place. We're going to go up 2 units to go over 1, 2, 3 units. That will not reduce, so we're going to leave that slope as 2/3. In this example, we counted up 4 to go over 6. That would reduce to 2/3. So either way that you calculated it is going to give you 2/3. So now we go to find the value of p plus n. So since p is -2, and we're going to add 2/3 to that, we end up getting -4/3. Now, how did we get this -4/3? Well, we get that by, first of all, establishing common denominators. This denominator is already 3, so I need to make this denominator, which is currently a 1, turn into a 3. So the -2 is going to turn into -6 divided by 3. Well, then when I go to add the two fractions now, -6/3 plus 2/3, the denominator would remain a 3, but then -6 plus 2 would give me -4, and that's where this -4/3 comes from for the answer. In example 2, we'll do something kind of similar. This time though, the y-intercept is r. So we're going to go to the y-axis. We're looking for where the line crosses the y-axis, and that appears to be at 5. Then we look at the slope. So again, if I pick 2 nice points and kind of count the slope. So if I use these 2 right here, this is going to take us down 3 to go to the right 4. I might have also considered using this point right here and maybe this point right here, which again would go down 3 units and over 4. From there, we calculate r plus q. So if I'm taking r, which is 5, plus q, which is -3/4, once again, I have to establish common denominators. So this is currently 5/1. If I want to turn that 1 into a 4, I have to multiply by 4, which means I do that to the top as well. So 20/4 plus -3/4, our 4 in the denominator stays the same, but then I've got to do 20 plus a -3, which gives me 17. 17/4 does not reduce, so 17/4 is the final answer for number 2. On number 3, we're switching gears here a little bit. We're trying to match the equations here with our graph that we have here. Now, the first thing I would look at here is the slope, and I want to realize that this slope is decreasing as we move from left to right. Now, that's making me think that it has a negative slope, which means I can cross off both A and B as options. First of all, this one doesn't even have an x in it, so this is actually telling me that the slope would be 0. And then for B, that slope is positive, so that would be going up from left to right. Both of these have negative slopes. So now I'm going to have to specifically look at what the slope is going to be. For that, I will find 2 nice points on the graph. And it looks like going from here to here, it goes down 3 units to go over 2 units, giving us a slope of -3/2, which means C would be the correct answer on number 3. For number 4, the first thing I want to do here is identify what type of line it is. This is a horizontal line, which means its slope is 0. Therefore, it must be a y equals a number line. So with that in mind, I know a y has to be involved in my problem. It definitely cannot be B or D. Now from there, if I look at A, if I'm solving that for y, to get rid of 3.5, I would have to divide both sides by 3.5, and that's going to give me y is equal to 0. Now that would be a horizontal line, but it would be at 0. So it would be right on top of the x-axis. For C, however, I would add 3.5 to both sides, giving me y is equal to 3.5. This does look like it's up at 3.5 and it's a horizontal line, so C is going to be the correct answer in number 4. When we get to number 5, we want to start by solving for y. Now when we go to divide everything through by 4 here, it might be a little intimidating to start with 2/3 divided by 4. So one kind of trick that I like to use here is if I was going to divide this all through by 4, I would start by not really worrying about what exact value I'm going to get here, but if I did a positive 2/3 divided by 4, everything's going to stay positive here. So right away, I would know I have a positive slope, and that's going to eliminate option A for me, and it's also going to eliminate option C. So now I would be looking between B and D. Then I know that I talked about dividing the 2/3 by 4, but I didn't talk about the -8. -8 divided by 4 would give me -2. So between my last 2 options here, this one is crossing at -2 for the intercept. This one looks like it's crossing at -8. So without really doing any official work here, I am going to say that B is the correct answer. Now, as far as actually dividing all this through by 4, if you wanted to see the work for that, the 4y divided by 4 is going to just reduce down to y. When we do 2/3 divided by 4, that's the same thing as multiplying by 1/4. So the 2 and 1 would multiply together, the 4 and 3 would multiply together, giving me 2/12, which reduces down to 1/6. Then -8 divided by 4 is going to reduce down to -2. So this is the equation of the line, which is going to match up with B. So therefore, we have a positive slope, which means it's increasing from left to right, which we had talked about before. But that tells us that it cannot be A or C. From there, we figure out that our intercept is a -2, which between these 2 options would have to be B. When we move on to number 6, they're saying that the equation y equals ax plus b, if that was graphed, we want to keep in mind that a would be a positive slope then, and b would be a positive intercept. So then we start talking about, well, what would it be if it was y equals -ax minus b? Well, this tells us, first of all, that it's a negative slope. So if we look at our graphs, that's going to eliminate options C and D for us. We know that this is a positive slope, so is this one, and D, those are both positive, so it has to be A or B. From there, we also have a negative intercept. So if I look at A and B, the one that has a y-intercept in the negative region is here at A. So A is going to be our correct answer on number 6. In number 7, we have 6 minus 2y is equal to x is graphed in the xy plane. Which of the following is true? Well, we start out with in A, the x-intercept and the y-intercept. If we are looking for an x-intercept, we would plug in a 0 for our y value. So we would have 6 minus 0 is equal to x. So we would get an x-intercept of 6. So far A is good. Then when I look at the y-intercept, from here I would have to plug in a 0 for x. I might add 2y over, so I get 6 is equal to 2y. Divide both sides by 2, and I am not going to get -2 as my y-intercept here. I could do the same thing for b. We already know that the x-intercept is correct, and I know that when I did the calculation for the y-intercept here, I was going to get 3, so this is also going to be false. Now, when we start talking about the slope, here we would want to solve this for y. So I'm going to take that equation, And I am going to subtract 6 on each side, which gave me that says negative 2y is equal to x minus 6. I divide everything through by negative 2. And so we get y. Here I've got 1 divided by negative 2, which is negative 1/2, x. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is going to give us positive 3. So our slope clearly is going to be negative 1/2, and that means that the answer is D. In number 8, we have which of the following is the equation of the line in the xy plane with an x-intercept of negative 2/7 and a y-intercept of 8/7. So again, if we're finding the x-intercept, our y value is a 0. So when I find the x-intercept, my y part is gone. We really just have negative 28x is equal to 8. I divide both sides by negative 28 and reduce this. I'm going to end up getting x is equal to, first of all, this was positive divided by negative, so it's negative. 8 over 28 is going to reduce down to 2/7. So far, our x-intercept for this one is correct. Now we look at the y-intercept. When calculating the y-intercept, we make our x value a 0. So here I've got 7y is equal to 8. We divide both sides by 7, and I'm going to be left with y is equal to 8 over 7. So we actually got the correct answer right away on A, meaning that we don't really need to look at B, C, or D here.